Hey friends, tonight you should relax, crawl under a warm blanket, and let me lead you into the world of Greek mythology, where stories both beautiful and tragic await. You will meet women swept into the whirlwind of Zeus, the supreme god, the king of thunderbolts, and, frankly, a guy responsible for endless drama. Before we begin, remember to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel only if you think my storytelling is good enough. Oh, and leave a comment to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's so much fun to know if you're tuning in from New York, London, or somewhere beneath the moonlight. Now, turn off the lights, draw the curtains, and let the night breeze whisper. Are you ready? Let's explore the forgotten fates in mythology. You stand on the ancient land of Phoenicia, a place now existing only on archaeological maps and in dust-laden museums. Before you lies a sun-drenched coastline, waves lapping gently as if singing themselves to sleep. All seems peaceful until you spot a curious sight, a beautiful girl gathering flowers by the shore, smiling as though there is nothing in the world to worry about. This is Europes, the very princess whose name one entire continent would one day bear. Europa is no Disney fairy tale princess. She wears no billowing gown and sings to the birds. She has only a simple, flowing dress, bare feet, and a lovable, somewhat naive trust in the world, but who could blame her? You might smile as you watch her stoop to stroke a white bull that has somehow appeared. A bull, white, with eyes that seem to smile. You may think, well, it's cute, I suppose, but real bulls don't gaze at people with Romeo's longing. Yet this is no ordinary bull, not Bessie from the farm. This is Zeus, the supreme god of Mount Olympus in bovine disguise. Why? Because godhood can be dull, but posing as an animal is a way to get close to mortals without being sued. Not exactly a lawful dating strategy, but remember, there were no women's rights attorneys back then. Instead of screaming, "Help, stranger danger," Europa climbs onto the bull's back. Perhaps she thinks it's a game, or she's just woken up and her brain hasn't fully booted. Whatever her reason, the moment she settles astride, the bull moves not on a gentle shoreline stroll but straight into the sea. Waves splash at her ankles, her dress billows, flowers scatter on the sand. You stand frozen, not sure whether to call for help or fire up Google Maps. The bull knows. Zeus swims in a single bound all the way to Crete, as though on a leisurely holiday. Upon reaching land, he sheds his bovine guise and transforms into a muscular man, curly hair, cloak fluttering, bearing a self-satisfied expression as if he's just achieved something worth boasting about. And Europa? She stands there, trembling, far from home, with no phone, no return ticket, and no ride-hail app. Zeus, like a savvy antique dealer, didn't arrive empty-handed. He gifted Europa a bronze robot named Talos to guard her. A divine spear perfect for chasing off any ex-boyfriend, if she had one. And a hunting dog that never lost its pre-impressive until you realize you'd need to buy food by the crate. Yet despite this arsenal of godly gifts, Europa remained just a stranded young woman. No one asked what she wanted. No one offered to take her home. You might sit there and think, well, she received presents, bore a god's children, and lives on a picturesque island could be worse. Sure, if you believe that being kidnapped, having a continent named after you, and raising children alone in a foreign land is everyone's dream, perhaps you should try Europa's life. But for most of us regular folks with a modicum of empathy, this tale feels off. Zeus, as usual, after indulging his divine ego, departed. Not because he was busy there, were no unread emails waiting, but simply because he'd lost interest. Europa, now mother to 3 sons Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon, was left to fend for herself. Imagine a young mother on an island with no daycare, no passport, and 3 boys destined for legendary Phamian inheritance Europa never asked for. Gradually, the island's inhabitants began calling the land by her name as a memorial, or perhaps as an excuse not to forge a new name. And so Europe was born, though Europa herself might have only wanted to return to Phoenicia's shoreline, continue picking flowers, and smile without fear of being swept into the sea by a disguised bull. And you, Listening to this story before sleep, have you ever wondered how many other Europa's history has overlooked? How many women were forgotten once the gods had noticed them? How many names we praise, not realizing behind each is a heart abandoned? Now you can lie down, pull up the covers, and close your eyes. Somewhere, on the dream map, you may see a girl sitting alone amid her divine gifts, leaning against a giant bronze robot, cradling a hunting dog, eyes fixed on the sea where she lost everything, and where people first began to remember her name. Europe bears her name, but her home was never hers to reclaim. You are Leda. Yes, not some Brooklyn neighborhood Leda, but the Leda, celebrated queen of Sparta, an icon of power, beauty, and a woman whose fate is so bizarre even Greek mythology has to apologize for going too far. Your life, by all accounts, is quite pleasant. A gilded palace, a husband king Tindariashu, while perhaps a bit dull, is kind, with no penchant for shape-shifting or global warfare. You have servants to fan you, silken mattresses, and a garden where you sometimes slip away to chat with the birds. A true queen, living out the ideal of classical Greece. But then, one languid afternoon, as you stroll among lavender bushes and wonder whether to snack on honey cakes or raisins after dinner, you encounter a strange creature, a swan, white, big-eyed, feathers glossy, wet as though it has just waded through the river Styx. It trembles, gasping, looking like the pitiful victim of some mortal chase. And you compassionate heart, or perhaps your mind simply on do good, autopilot bend down to embrace it. Mistake number 1, hugging an unknown animal in ancient Greece. Mistake number 2, failing to notice those swan's eyes were all too familiar, the look you only see when gods are scheming for fun. Because yes, that is no mere swan, it's Zeus, again Zeus. Incapable of leaving anyone in peace, the supreme god boasted a long cosplay resume. He'd appeared as a bull, an eagle, golden rain, fire, smoke, and now as a swan. Partly because he adored disguises, partly to evade rights that did not yet exist. You did not choose this, no one asked. No, did Leda consent, was ever uttered. No contracts, no forms. Only a bewildered swan in your arms, and then everything dissolves into a hazy memory that even Apollo himself dare not transcribe verbatim. The next morning you awaken, but no one believes what happened. Your husband still sips his wine, discussing the spring festival offerings, while something in you is not quite right. A few days later, you give birth not to a child but to 2 eggs. Yes, eggs. Neither chickens nor ducks would claim kinship after such an event. From those 2 eggs hatch 4 children, as if biology itself glitched. Helen, the woman whose beauty would set Troy ablaze. Clytemnestra, destined to become a Bath, slaying assassin of husbands. And Castor and Pollux, the immortal twins, warriors, heroes, and the reason astrology added another constellation. People tell tales of those children as mythic legend. They forget you, the mother who birthed war, the woman never asked her opinion. You become an artistic symbol, framed in Renaissance paintings, lying still with eyes closed, skin porcelain, white, beside the swan whose wings curl around your waist as if in apology. But not quite a real apology. Have you ever been allowed to tell your own story? Number. Do you have the right to speak? Also no. History is fond of doing stucking women into paintings, engraving their names on golden tablets, then utterly ignoring their feelings. A statue that breathes, an icon without a voice. You might think, well, at least she's the mother of the famous Helen, but have you considered how Leda must have felt watching that beautiful daughter grow up, hailed as a gift from the gods, while you yourself were treated as nothing more than a package in transit? Or how it felt to see your husband, who still believes he's Helen's father, holding his child with pride, while you carried a secret that weighed you down for life. And now you lie there, in another world, far from Sparta, far from those legendary eggs. You have no wings, yet you are surrounded by them. No words are spoken on your behalf save the verses that praise the beauty of Leda. They never mention your tears or the questions you were never permitted to ask. Only you, listening to this story at midnight, know that perhaps The paintings have become too beautiful, and the truth is far less romantic. Next time you see a white-feathered swan, eyes glistening, trembling like the star of a romance film, don't embrace it, don't comfort it. Look closely for a spark of divinity in its gaze. And if you see one, run. Run as if you're clutching state secrets in your arms. Because in the world of myth, women rarely get to choose but are always expected to carry the weight of history. You are Io, not AI, mind you, but Ioth, Greek maiden living a chaste life in the temple of the goddess Hera. You offer sacrifices, light incense, wash your hands in sacred spring water, and never suspect that your life is about to derail faster than one of Zeus's lightning bolts. You aren't a princess or queen, just a devoted priestess. Your duties are to keep the temple spotless, pray at the appointed hours, and steer well clear of anything marked trouble in letters as big as a signboard. But you've overlooked one crucial truth. In Greek myth, the more obedient you are, the more likely you become a target for bored gods. And, as you might have guessed or perhaps failed to guess on night, when the mist lay thick as a layer of frosting, Zeus appeared, no disguise, no bull, swan, or golden shower act. He came as Zeus himself, full power, the true thunder god. You can imagine how you felt, terrified, angry, powerless. But here's the strange part, the epics never record your emotions. They only say that Zeus loved Io, and you know that in ancient Greek, love can be a euphemism for non-consensual. And you, priestess doing everything by the book, suddenly find your sanctuary, Hera's own temple, turned into the place where your agony began. Zeus, of course, panicked, not because he regretted the wrongdoing, he'd done this often enough, but because of Hera, his official wife, famed for her unforgiving vengeance. No one wants to sleep on Olympus's couch. So Zeus, in a display of survival instinct worthy of respect, decided to hide the evidence. And you, Iobe, some inscrutable divine mechanism, were transformed into a white cow. Yes, not a shimmering spirit, not a drift of cloud, but a cow. White, four-legged, big-eyed, mooing. Yo, a woman who once chanted sacred hymns and kindled holy fires now stand bewildered in a field, staring at your own tail swishing in the breeze. Don't expect Hera to take pity. She arrives, looks at you, or rather at the cow, and smiles. Not a friendly smile, but one that says, "Ah, it's my husband's stunt again, but this time I have the leisure." She does not kill you, no need. She simply entrusts you to Argusa giant with 100 eyes. Pause for a moment to imagine this. One pair of eyes watching you is unnerving enough, but 100 eyes opening and closing in sequence like full HD security cameras, 24/7. You cannot hide, you cannot cry. You can only wander in circles, moo in shame, and pray for some miracle to set you free. And then it comes, but like every mythic miracle, it carries consequences. Hermes, the god's heraldess, dispatched by Zeus to deal with Argus. And like a spy with flair, Hermes plays his lyre, weaves stories, and lulls Argus to sleep. As soon as all 100 eyes have closed, Hermes strikes, ending the life of the unluckiest giant in the solar system. You think you're free? Think again. Hera, not in the mood for games now, unleashes a fly, not an ordinary fly, a venomous one. Small, swift, its bite stings with lasting pain and never tires. It haunts you like an unnamed torment, chasing you through valleys, across forests, wading through seas, scaling mountains, over Asia and into Africa. You run, you wade, you crawl literally. No respite, no help, no understanding, because you are a cow. You cannot speak. You cannot write letters. You cannot send a plea for rescue. You suffer hunger, thirst, and agony, mooing not in human words but in bovine cries. Each cry is a plea for none to answer. You cross the Bosphorus Seas. That name later comes to mean cow's passage. But who wants an entire strait to memorialize the humiliation of their life? Finally, after a journey even Google Maps cannot chart, you arrive in Egypt. And there, as though the gods themselves have grown weary of your plight, Zeus Decidesser Hera relents, and you are returned to human form. You now have legs, arms, and a face again. But your voice? It does not instantly come back, nor does your trust, nor your sense of safety. You clutch your belly because you are pregnant, and in that moment, you don't know whether to weep or to be thankful that at least you're no longer a cow. You give birth to a son, Epaphus, a child of divine blood, destined to be a king, the founder of a dynasty. But you, Io, are you still yourself? Or are you forever the one stripped of her voice, made into a symbol without anyone ever asking for your consent? You are Semele, not a queen, not a mythic princess in a gold-embroidered silk gown, but a mortal woman smart enough, dreamy enough, and unfortunately, just unlucky enough. Your life before it all went up in flames was pretty good. You were born into solid lineage. Your father was Cadmus, king of Thebes, and your mother Harmoniathe, daughter of the war god and the love goddess. A pedigree that, if printed on a resume, would leave any recruiter speechless. But you weren't thinking of politics, you were thinking of love. And then, one fine day, or rather, one fine night, since Zeus loves to appear under romantic moonlight, you heard that voice. A warm, hushed whisper of your name, as though the entire universe revolved around the two of you. You never saw his face, only felt those vows in the air. I will bring you gentle rains. I will place the stars at your feet. I am all you need. Love, number. This was Zeus, master of divine courtship. No Tinder, no profile picture needed, just words alive with thunder. And you, Semele, you believed. You fell in love, truly, madly, deeply. You loved so completely that you never stopped to ask, who is Zeus really? You only knew that each time he came, the sky would shift, the breeze would soften, and your heart was no longer your own. And then, just like every unchanging myth, it happened, you became pregnant. Carrying a child unlike any other, a child of a god. Everything seemed blissful. But you forgot one crucial thing. Zeus already had a wife. And his wife was none other than Hera, a goddess of marriage, family, and a jealousy so fierce it could make all of nature keep its distance. Hera did not storm the temple with lightning. No, she was far subtler. She came in the guise of an old crone, face creased, voice honey smooth, sat beside you and asked, "My child, I hear you carry Zeus's child?" You nodded proudly, perhaps with innocence. And she continued, "If it truly is Zeus, why has he never shown you his true form? Can you trust a lover who hides his face?" You began to question. At night, you held your belly and gazed at the sky. If he truly loves me, why hide? A simple question, a small question mark. But in Greek myth, sometimes that's all it takes to change a fate. The next time Zeus appeared, you dared to make that request, not for a ring, not for a palace, only for the truth. "Show me your true form," you said. "Let me know whom I love." Zeus panicked. Not the, "I left my wallet at the restaurant" kind of panic, but the, "if I obey, you will die" kind. Yet you would not let go. For when one loves, one is blind, and you were no exception. Finally, Zeus sighed, bit his lip, and agreed. "I will keep my promise," he said, omitting that it would kill you. And so he revealed his true form. Not some handsome face, but the god Zeus in full glory. Lightning crackling from his eyes, bolts of electricity dancing from his fingers, his body ablaze with otherworldly light like a cosmic firework. And you, Semele, a mere mortal, fragile as a petal in a storm, could not withstand it. You were consumed by flame, not the metaphorical heart ablaze with love, but your whole body turned to ashes. In that moment, every vow vanished. The stars themselves fell silent. Your brilliant love ended in a literal blink of lightning. Zeus, panicked or perhaps remorseful, rushed to the smoldering pile of your remains. And from those glowing embers he rescued a tiny life. Dionysus, your unborn child. With no incubator, no NICU, Zeus did the only thing a god could do. He stitched the infant into his own thigh. Yes, you heard correctly, into his thigh. Thus Dionysus was born a second time, emerging from Zeus's divine thigh to become the god of wine, ecstasy, theater, and losing control. A child raised amid legend, and living testament to the price you, Semele, paid. And you? You became a story, a single line in an epic, a painting of hair singed to ashes, eyes closed, lying between lightning and dust. They call you mother of a god, the last mortal lover Zeus ever loved. But did anyone ask what you wanted? Did anyone listen to your heart, which craved only an honest love, unflashy, ungodly, and above all, not one that would burn you alive within it? Dear audience, sit back and relaxer, sip a glass of water, then stay tuned for the next revealing twist. Comment 1. If you enjoyed this tale, so we know you're still here. You are Callisto, not a princess in a flounced gown waiting on a balcony for a prince. No, you are of the wilds, a true huntress in Artemis's retinue, the virgin goddess of the bow, who dislikes men so fiercely that her idea of team building is meditating by a stream, not bar hopping. You carry a bow at your shoulder, a sword at your hip, and freedom in your eyes. No lace skirts, only animal hide, and a cloak that won't snag when you shoot birds. Your laughter rings through the forest like the song of deer and rustling leaves. You and your sisters live together like a classical all-girls boarding school. No men, no drama, only deer hunts, and sleeping under the stars. Then, as in every bittersweet Greek tale, Zeus appears. Zeus, the god renowned for, I happened to pass by and found someone interesting. But this time, he doesn't show up as a bull, swan, or shower of gold. No, he goes big. He transforms into Artemis herself. Not some random woman, but the supreme leader of the no-dating sisterhood. And you? You revere Artemis so deeply you never meet her gaze. So when Artemis gently approaches and embraces you, you have no suspicion. You believe. You believe the goddess loves you. You believe this is a sacred moment of two kindred spirits in the holy forest. Alas, it is not Artemis, it is Zeus, whose resume of disguises is longer than the Met Gala guest list. And you, Callisto, who only wanted to live among the trees, are given no warning, no odd breeze, no chance to say no. It simply happens, written into myth without any concern for your feelings. Time passes. You discover you are pregnant. In Artemis's circle, this is not merely inconvenient, it is betrayal. Virginity is not just a virtue, it's the prerequisite for joining the hunt. And when your waist can no longer hide your secret, your sister's gazes shift. Artemis does not shout or weep, she merely coolly expels you. No questions asked, no search for truth, no investigation of your consent. You are banished from the forest, the only home you've known. You, who once felled wolves with a bow, now must flee your own life. And when Hera, Zeus's wife, learns of it, she does not punish her husband. Of course not. Olympus's time-honored tradition is punishing women, and you, Callisto, stand in the crosshairs. Hera does not scorch the woods, she does not hurl stones. She transforms you into a bear, a great black bear with thick fur and sharp claws but with human eyes. Still you. Still feeling pain. Still recalling laughter in the woods. Still dreaming of nights by the fire, listening to Artemis's tales of old victories. But now you cannot speak, cannot laugh, cannot hold your newborn son. You can only roam the forest in silence, hiding behind trees, avoiding human eyes. Years pass. Your son, Arcas, grows up not knowing his mother. He is raised like a little prince, learning archery, tracking game until fate, as ever, leads him to the very forest where you dwell. One afternoon, as sunlight filters through the leaves, he raises his bow. Before him stands a great black bear, slow moving, with moist eyes. It is you. He does not know. You cannot scream, stop. You cannot hold up a sign reading, I am your mother. You only stand there, waiting for the arrow to fly. And at that very moment, Zeus intervenes once more, not to apologize, not to set things right, but simply to transform you and your son into two constellations. You are Ursa Majortha, Great Bear constellation, and Arcas is Ursa Minor. Mother and son lie side by side in the night sky, torn from the green forest that once held all you loved. Every evening, people look up to you for direction, to admire the stars, to recite poetry. They call you legend, a symbol, eternal light. But has anyone ever asked that light, Did you want to be set among the stars? Or did you merely long to return to the little woodland where deer calls echoed through the leaves, where you could be yourself, neither bear nor constellation, not the betrayed lover, not the mother of the lesser bear? Just Callisto, who loved hunting deer, drawing her bow, and laughing freely in the wind. You are Danae, yes, a true Greek princess. You have no shortage of flowing gowns or ceremonial music, but you lack one utterly fundamental thing in a free life: a window. Why, you ask? Ah, it begins with a king named Acrisius, your father, who harbored an obsession unlike any other. He feared not old age or death, but a grandson. A prophecy foretold that one day the son you would bear would kill him, and rather than seek therapy or keep a journal to soothe himself, he chose to imprison you in a brazen dungeon. Not a stone cell, mind you. This was a princess's prison. Bronze, lined from floor to ceiling, with no door, only a narrow slit letting in light so scant it matched your father's narrow-mindedness. Everything gleamed, sealed, and hopeless. You were forbidden any visitors, no human contact, your father simply reasoned. No contact with men, no grandson. Alas, he had not factored in the gods' creative potential. So one quiet night, as you sighed and stared at the bronze ceiling, Zeus appeared, not through the front gate, not disguised as a swan, a bull, or a thundercloud, but in a more artistic fashion, a shower of golden rain. Yes, gold. Not coins dropped from an ATM, but a shimmering liquid streaming through the roof slit like a marvelous dream. You saw it and didn't know whether to shout, "Miracle," or fetch a bucket. But then it touched you. And in the classic formula of divine encounters, you were never asked for consent, only subjected to fate. The result? Some months later, you became pregnant. You, who had never left those 4 bronze walls, now carried a living child. And you named him Perseus. Your father, of course, was furious. He didn't need to understand what had occurred or care that you had no choice. He saw a grandson, exactly as the prophecy declared. And since he could not kill you after all, he had a royal reputation to maintain. He locked both you and your infant son in a wooden chest and cast you adrift at sea. Pause for a moment to imagine. You, Danae, princess trained to dance and sing in the temple, now lie in a wooden box, clutching your newborn son. As the sea roars around you like it's plotting to overturn your coffin, you have no oars, no compass, no sunscreen, only your arms wrapped tightly around your child, and a question echoing in your mind: why? The ocean is fickle, yet merciful. The chest drifts ashore on the island of Seriphos, where kind fishermen haul you out. They ask no questions of lineage, demand no papers, only help you erect a shelter and place their trust in the woman cradling a precious child. Perseus grows up. You teach him archery, shield use, and stories of the stars, not to forge a warrior, but to ensure he never knows helplessness. And then, as in all old tales, a new trial arrives. The king of Seriphos, Polydectes, a man whose taste could use improvement, sets his sights on you, not for your ideals or character, but simply because you are beautiful. He proposes marriage. You refuse politely, firmly, but to one accustomed to having his every whim pampered, refusal is unthinkable. So Polydectes devises a secondary scheme: eliminate Perseus by sending him on a monster hunt, specifically for Medusa, the gorgon whose snake hair and petrifying gaze kills on sight. A plan of, if your mother won't agree, I'll keep your son away forever. And you do not brandish a sword, you do not mount a shield, you wait, resolute, silent, unobtrusive. You trust your son. Trust that after all you've endured the sea, the dungeon, the golden rain, you and Perseus are strong enough to defy any small-minded king. You are not as cunning as Athena, not as formidable as Hera. But you have survived every ordeal no goddess ever had to endure. You protect your son not with magic, but with unwavering love. You need no helmet or weapon, only faith that does not falter, even when everything else has been taken. You are Danae, one who was imprisoned, cast into the sea, turned into mythic spectacle, but you did not drown, you did not remain silent. You are not defined by a shower of gold, but by a resilience no one taught you yet you possess nonetheless. You are Alcmene, an ancient Greek womanot, one who strolls the market looking for lace dresses, but one steadfast enough to wait for her husband to return from war without filing for divorce, without sending reproachful letters, and still rising early to bake bread like a silent domestic heroine. Amphitryon, your husband, has gone off to avenge his brothers, rout the bandits, and do all the things ancient Greek men typically did: wage war, claim victory, and hope his wife remains at home. And you, with fidelity worthy of legend, do just that. You mind the hearth, keep the fire stoked, and say, no, to every wood, be seducer mortal, or godly. Everything proceeds as expected until one night the door opens. You see Amphitryon step inside his familiar posture, the voice you know by heart, the gaze that makes you think, at last, you've returned. You embrace him, your smile bursting with relief. And then, like any tearful reunion, you welcome him as if you had never been apart. The problem is, it is not Amphitryon. It is Zeus. Yes, again, Zeus the god with the peculiar hobby of taking any form except his own. This time, he does not choose swan, bull, or shower of gold. He chooses your husband's face. No permission asked, no door knock, no voluntary contract, only perfect disguise and a self-satisfied cosmic grin. You Alcmene have no idea. How could you? Who would suspect the man they love when he stands before you, looks you in the eye, and calls your name with the voice you know as well as your own breath? A few days later, the real husband returns, and you are confused. You can't understand why he is returning again. You ask, weren't you back a few nights ago? And Amphitryon, baffled, begins to sense that something is very wrong, as if someone has stolen his role in his own home. Then you become pregnant, not with one child, but two. One is Heracleson of Zeus, carrying within him both the blood of the sky and all the trouble of the Greek pantheon. The other is Iphicleson of Amphitryon, entirely mortal, with no superpowers, and not pursued by a goddess's jealousy. Speaking of Hera, you should steel yourself. She does not send a congratulatory missive upon a birth. No rages. Not at Zeus the husband truly deserving blame, but at Heracles, a newborn who hasn't yet spoken a word, and at you, the woman who had no say. She sends 2 serpents into the cradle. And while you're preparing milk or singing lullabies, you hear the infant's cry, a cry every mother recognizes as signifying grave danger. You rush in and find tiny Heracles gripping the 2 snakes by the neck, crushing them as though they were cloth. And that is only the opening chapter. From that moment on, Heracles grows amid Hera's implacable hatred, relentless trials, and battles that would shatter mortal bones at the mere mention. And you, Alcmene? You stand on the sidelines of every tragedy, not as mother of the hero, but as the woman who bears the consequences of divine caprice. You did not choose Zeus. You did not invite him to your bed. You did not ask to bear a hero. You only loved your husband. You waited for him as every good wife in Greek tales does. Yet you have become a symbol of helplessness at the whims of gods. They sing of Heracles your son with countless legends, slaying lions, severing serpent heads, cleaning the Augean stables. But no one mentions you, the one who nurtured him, healed his wounds, wiped his tears, cooked his porridge, and soothed his sleep, for a child never at peace. You Alcmene not appear in epic odes. No song recounts how you endured betrayal, deception, and still loved the fruit of that deception. You had no choice, but you chose love nonetheless. Not out of necessity, but because it was the only thing you could control in a world where everything, even your husband's face, could be stolen by a god at any moment. You are Antiope, princess of Thebes. Not the sort of princess who sits by a window brushing her hair and singing while waiting for a prince, but the kind who must learn to run, to hide, and ultimately give birth to twins in a forest. But hold on, let's start at the beginning. You were born the pride of your kingdom. Everyone expected you to marry a prince from a neighboring realm, to extend your line and produce chubby heirs. Everything was on a fairy tale track until Zeus appeared. And in a time-honored tradition of the Unwelcome Disguises series, Zeus chose this time to take the form of a satyr, half man, half goat, Yes, a goat. Not a dashing nobleman, not a handsome god, but a creature with shaggy beard, curling horns, and a courting style that has nothing to do with polite greeting. You appear horrified. No time to cry for help, and no one would listen. And from that moment, your life veered onto a course even a seer wouldn't dare write down. Pregnant by Zeus, but not the welcome divine child of Beyoncé level fame. No, you were expelled from home, fleeing in the night, your belly growing round, your feet trampling dried leaves and mossy stones. No servants, no crownly fear, and 2 lives growing inside you. You gave birth alone in the forest, no midwife, no clean cloth. 2 boys, Amphion and Zeus, were born beneath the canopy, to the sound of wind through leaves, and then you left them in a wicker basket, entrusting their fates to nature, like a supplication slip in a divine lottery. You kept running, but freedom did not come swiftly. Instead, your father caught you, and to ensure you wouldn't escape again, he handed you over to Dirce, your aunt, with a heart as soft as granite. Dirce was no knitting grandmother waiting for grandchildren. She embodied personal vengeance, simmering jealousy, and a special hatred for anyone entangled with Zeus. Dirce chained you literally. No metaphor, no poetic flourish, cold iron fetters around your wrists. She made a private prisoner of you, tormenting you daily, as if your rape and flight weren't sufficient penance for sins you never chose. Meanwhile, your twin sons grew up among shepherds like every mythic pair of twins. One strong, one artistic. Zeus preferred hunting, wielding strength to quash disorder. Amphion wielded a lyre and an artist's soul, but make no mistake, he could use his music to raise the walls of Thebes, so don't mistake artistry for weakness. When the 2 learned their true heritage, that their mother was chained in the palace where they were born, they returned, not to negotiate, but to overthrow. Dear still, the same understood none of what was happening. She ordered her men to seize a slave woman, you, and bind you to the horns of a raging bull to be torn apart for weekend sport. But the bull balked, and your 2 sons intervened. You barely recognized them. They had grown, yet their eyes were unmistakably very gaze you first saw beneath the trees when they were newborn. The same look that made you loosen the basket's ties before dawn. At last, you were rescued. Dirce received her punishment in true Greek fashion. Bound to a bull's horns and dragged to her end, a finale fit for any tragicomic play. There you stood, free after decades of torment. Freedom arrived so late that your hair had silvered and your back had bent. You embraced your children, yet your hands shook not from weakness, but because you could no longer tell dream from waking life. History remembers Amphion and Zeus, the twin legends who built Thebes' walls with lyre and club. They earned their monuments, their histories, their songs. And you? You, Antiope, their mother deceived, abandoned, shackled, remain but a footnote in the city's chronicle. No epic was sung of you, no statue raised by the riverside, no lullaby whispered your name. Yet you endure in the story's gaps, in every sigh of women robbed of choice but still surviving. You are Antiope not because you were once a princess, but because you remain yourself, even when gods, chains, and history tried to strip everything from your hands. You are Aegina, not Aegina, the tourist town you spot on a Greek map with postcard-perfect beaches the color of Apollo's eyes. No, you are the original Aegina, a nymph by the river who only wanted a peaceful life amid trees and flowing water, undisturbed by anyone, with no one singing romantic ballads beneath the willows at dusk. But you lived in the age of godsand. There was one god in particular who loved disturbing people's peace: Zeus. Zeus, like a man with ultimate power but zero respect for personal space, had a habit of strolling by, unannounced, and turning every encounter into a tragedy for the woman involved. And you, Aegina, fell right into that script. One day, as you dangle your feet in the water, chatting with the birds, Zeus appears. Not as golden rain, not as a swan or a column of smoke. No, this time he came in his full divine presence with words that would freeze anyone in place. You are mine. Before you could react, you were gone from the riverbank. No conversation, no consently abduction in its most classical sense. He carried you off to an island uninhabited, without welcome signs, without Wi-Fi. Only sand, rocks, and the sense of being severed from everything that defined you. He called it a gift. You called it loneliness packaged in a wild nature setting. There, you bore a child. You named him Ayakusand like every demigod. He grew up with eyes as hard as stone and a destiny as heavy as a mountain. But you did not spin fairy tales for him. You told him the truth. You spoke of his natal river, of freedom lost, of a name reduced to coordinates. You thought it was over. But then Heraies, the queen of jealousy, able to turn any slight into a national-scale disaster, discovered you. She did not send a warning letter. She did not hold a press conference. She unleashed a plague. A deadly breath swept across the island. People collapsed. Trees withered. Children's laughter vanished. The once deserted isle became a lonely graveyard, where the wind's howl served as the sole farewell. You cradled Aeacus, the only surviving child, and wondered, was this your fault? That question echoed each night, needing no answer. Zeus, in a rare moment between power and remorse, resolved to create people from ants. Yes, you heard correctly, ants. He transformed ants into humans, the island's new inhabitants, and placed them under Aeacus's rule. A gesture both brutal and inventive, if one enjoys the idea of neighbors who were once insects. And so the island lived again. The new populace tilled fields, built homes, and erected temples. They called the island Aginanamed after you. They sculpted your image, named streets in your honor, even minted coins bearing your likeness, your gentle smile and distant gaze as if you had willingly consented to it all. But no one asked, "Are you happy?" No one carved a scene of you holding your child on a rock, or weeping beside the fallen during the plague. No one spoke of the solitude of raising your son among former ants, or the loneliness that drove you to converse with trees just to feel alive. Aegina became a symbol, a name on a map, a mask in a festival, a blueprint for a founding myth. But you ceased to be yourself. You became only a sculpted version of an unnamed sorrow. People remember Aeacus, the just king. They revere the Myrmidons, the undefeated army born of ants. But you? All that remains is your name. No stories, no poems. No one asking, did Aegina ever wish to leave her riverside home? And tonight, as you lie in bed, preparing to close your eyes, imagine an island not of sand, but of memory. A place where a woman was stolen and then forgotten. A land that bears her name, yet never heeds her voice. You are Elara, not a heroine, not a goddess, with no army and certainly no contract with Olympus. You are merely a mortal girl, living your quiet life amid a world teeming with absurd tales of bored gods who have little concept of consent. Then, as if by a pre-wound clock of fate, Zeus appeared. No fireworks, no soundtrack, no petals at your feet, just his sovereign gaze and an unverifiable promise. I will protect you. That phrase is often the opening line to every tragedy and myth, as you know. But Zeus, like a man with supreme power who fails to manage the consequences, chose to hide you in a cave, not a villa, not a castle. A rock cavern, dark, windowless, unlit, with no air circulation and, of course, no escape. Why? To keep you from Hera. Yes, Heratha, lawful wife of Zeus and unofficial president of the Jealous Wives Club, except with their own husbands. Zeus thought that if he hid you well enough, Hera would never discover you like a child stashing a toy under the covers, believing the world can't see. So you were taken deep underground to a hidden grotto. No one knew, no one searched, and there was certainly no emergency call button. You sat there, carrying the child you had never planned for, with no light, no companion, as the days dripped by like water from the cavern ceiling. Then the day of birth arrived, and what happened next was as classically Greek as it gets. The baby was too large, not 7 pounds 8 ounces large, but literally gigantic. Tityos, the name later whispered in horror stories, began his entrance into the world, and you could not endure. You ellarated. In that cave, no one heard your scream, no midwife, no Athena to whisper encouragement at your side. There was only cold stone and a body torn apart by the very life you never chose to bring forth. Zeus did not return. No farewell, no wreath, no elegy by Orpheus. Eulerare noted in myth as if in a footnote, mother of Tydeus, died in childbirth because the child was too large. Yes, that is the entirety of your identity, the girl hidden underground, who died in silence, and was buried along with her untold pain. And what of Tydeus? Well, the boy grew fast, very fast, so tall that when he stood, his head could sweep the clouds. But you never saw him. You never knew whether he smiled. You never knew how far that first cry traveled through the cavern where you lay. You never knew your son would become the next victim of the god's wrath. Tydeus, growing, curious, enormous, and confused one day, dared the unthinkable. He laid hands on Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. In other words, he violated the lawful spouse of another god. And fate followed suit. Divine vengeance unfolded, as if casting the next horror film. Tydeus was seized, hurled into the underworld, and there, 2 vultures were assigned to feast upon his liver for all eternity. He did not die, he only suffered, forever. As though the very blood you shed in that hidden cave was still not enough to end the endless torment inflicted by gods who wield supreme power yet flare with rage at the slightest provocation. And you, Elara, lie beneath earth and stone. No tomb was built, no name was carved, yet a crater on one of Jupiter's moons bears your name, Elara. It sounds like an honor. But when you died hidden beneath the ground, being remembered only as a patch of cold cosmic dust offers little comfort. Your name lives on, but no one knows what you wanted. No one asks, did Elara wish to remain in that cave? No one wonders, did Elara long to be a mother? No myth recounts your soul's anguish, the terror of solitude in darkness, the feeling of being turned into a secret to hide rather than a woman to cherish. You have no epic song, no ballad. You led no armies, wielded no weapons, battled no 3-headed beasts, yet you endured it all: abandonment, oblivion, and ultimately, absolute silence. And if tonight you look up at the sky and spot a distant point of light called Elara, don't call it a symbol. Call it the evidence that a woman once buried beneath the earth now stands among the stars, not to be glorified, but to be remembered. Slowly, silently, yet still there. You are Metis, not a goddess of love, not a symbol of war, nor a princess waiting for destiny. You are primordial wisdom, the smartest titaness of your age, and the living embodiment of strategy, prudence, and blunt honesty that leaves others hesitant to speak. And you were chosen by Zeus. Or rather, Zeus chose you, but unlike his usual transformations into swans, bulls, showers of gold, or columns of smoke, with you he sought an honest marriage. Métis was not deceived by any destiny encounter ruse. You knew all those tricks too well. You are wisdom personified. You analyze, predict, critique. Zeus needed you not merely for your beauty, but because he needed victory. When the Titans rebelled, Zeus struggled endlessly. Who helped devise the strategy of ambush and had the fire-breathing monsters switch sides? You. Who advised forcing his father Cronus to disgorge the children he'd swallowed? Again, you. You were not just his companion, you were the brain behind the throne. Then you became pregnant. A cause for celebration, right? 2 gods in love, a child on the way, the heavens preparing a feast. But for Zeus, your pregnancy was not joyful news but a siren's warning. A prophecy descended like a coconut falling on his head. Metis's firstborn will be a great goddess, but the second child will overthrow his father. Zeus did not care for the word overthrow. He was the god with earth and sky at his feet, thunderbolts in hand, and an ego sensitive to threats. So rather than discuss, trust, or who knows be a good father, he chose betrayal. One day, as you sat quietly in a rocky cave, slicing apples and pondering names for your child, Zeus arrived. He was gentle, sweet, as though he had never read the prophecy. Then he asked, "You can transform into anything, can't you?" You smiled, without suspicion, and cheerfully shifted into a single, shimmering drop of water. And Zeus swallowed you, gently, swiftly, without so much as a word of consent. One of the most dramatic, devour your spouse moments in mythic history. A single meal containing wisdom, loyalty, and a mother-to-be encapsulated in one divine gulp. But you did not vanish. You are wisdom itself. You are not easily digested. Within Zeus's body, you endured. You could not escape, yet you did not surrender. You forged armor. You shaped helmets. You crafted strategies for the child you had yet to meet, Athena. Every hammer strike inside his skull sounded like a conscience's alarm bell, though Zeus lacked any conscience to rouse. Instead, he had a headache. Not the kind of headache that comes from forgetting your email password, but one so severe that the thunder god himself banged his head on stone. Olympus reeled. The other gods panicked. And finally, Hephaestus the heavenly blacksmith lifted his divine axe and cleaved Zeus's skull open as one might split a coconut, with a single crack. And from that opening, Athena emerged fully armed, her helmet gleaming, spear in hand, eyes radiant like the rising sun on schedule. All were stunned. A goddess born from Zeus's head? In truth, born from you. You were the one who forged her weapons, the one who sheltered her in darkness, the one erased from the tale after its first chapter. Athena is celebrated as the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and justice. Yet few recall that wisdom once had her own name, Metis. No statues commemorate you, no city venerates you, you have no temple, no hymns sung in your honor, you became an idea as though you never had a form. Only a footnote remains. Metis's first wife, mother of Athena, swallowed. You were once advisor, spouse, and the very source of a myth. But you were reduced to a concept lodged in someone else's mind deprived of voice, body, and choice. And Zeus? He still sits on his throne, lightning in hand, recounting tales of the daughter who sprang from my head. A story itches oddly to hear, yet feels all too familiar. Men boast of their exploits, while women are tucked away into bellies, into shadows, into footnotes. You are Metis, you need no one to call you goddess. You are wisdom, and wisdom does not vanish. It may be swallowed occasionally. But even when imprisoned in a god's mind, it remains patient, unyielding, and quietly hammering, waiting for the day it will be heard. You are Oedipus. Your name might sound like an ancient Greek mosquito-repellent brand, but in truth, you are the centerpiece of one of the longest, most tangled tragedies ever written, a story so fraught with taboo that even Netflix would hesitate to adapt it, afraid of community guidelines violations. You knew none of this when you were born. You were just a tiny newborn, wrinkled skin, crying wah-wah like any other baby. But unfortunately, your parents King Laius and Queen Jocasta of Thebeshad received a most delightful birthday gift from Apollo, a prophecy that this child would grow up to kill his father and marry his mother. And they, like every responsible Greek parent, decided on the most reasonable course of action. They pinned your ankles together and left you in the wilderness, at the mercy of weather and wild beasts. Ah, truly inspirational parenting. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on perspective, a kind shepherd found you. He may not have been a bloodline expert, but he knew life-saving when he saw it. He took you home and handed you over to the royal family of Corinth, where king and queen were in dire need of a child more than tribute. You grew up as a genuine prince, educated properly, eating clean grapes, playing the lyre, and completely unaware that you were second-hand from another kingdom. Life was smooth until one too many drinks at a party got someone to blurt out, "Oedipus, are you sure you're their real son?" You laughed. Inside, your world shattered like a phone dropping from the fourth floor. You did what any self-respecting Greek would. You went to the oracle at Delphi. Instead of hearing, "Rest easy, my child," you received a horrifying bonus prophecy. You will kill your father and take your mother. No address, no map, just a spoiler hanging like a dead zone on your GPS. You panicked. You decided to leave Corinth, believing that if you went far enough, fate couldn't find you in the phone book. Unaware that your adoptive parents weren't your true blood. You thought you were making a noble sacrifice. Fate? It snickered at the crossroads ahead. At that literal and most on-the-nose metaphor in Greek literature, you collided with a stranger, A heated argument ensued. Words were exchanged. Violence erupted. In a moment of furious impulse, you killed him. You felt some guilt, but then pressed on because who had time to check every stranger's ID in an era without paperwork? You arrived in Thebisa City in chaos, tangled like spaghetti because of a man-headed, lion-bodied monster called the Sphinx, sort of like Google, but deadlier. It posed riddles to everyone, devouring those who answered incorrectly. Youth, the perfect mix of confidence and a 130 IQ, solved its riddle. The city erupted in celebration, the people hailed you, and you once a nobody were crowned king. Your throne came with a complimentary queen? Too obvious. Jocasta, yes, your mother. No one checked your lineage. No one called for a DNA test. You and your mother, unaware of the truth, married each other and bore 4 children. A proper family, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and a blood tie strong enough to make any modern therapist faint. Time passed, until a plague swept through Thebes, not a mere cold, but a sickness that killed people one by one for no apparent reason. Yoas, a responsible king, sought its cause. Clues emerged, rumors from the oracle, odd recollections from a retired shepherd. The truth surfaced like a burnt loaf in an oven. You are the child of Laius and Jocasta. The man you killed at the crossroads? Your father. The woman you sleep beside each night? Your mother. And those 4 lovely children? Also, your grandchildren. Jocasta, unable to bear the shock, entered her chamber and hung herself by the curtains. And you? You took your mother's hairpin and drove it into your own eyes, exiling yourself from the city. No one demanded you do this. No one forced you to atone, yet you, Oedipus, decided to pay your own price. Because you had seen the truth, and you wanted to see nothing more. You wandered, from prince to blind beggar, from king of a city to a man with a wooden staff. You once tried to flee your fate only to discover it awaited you at every turn you took. You were not malicious, nor calculating. You were merely the victim of a strange systemon where prophecies always come true, but no one listens carefully. You tried to do what was right. Yet the more you fled, the deeper you fell into the very trap you feared. And tonight, as you lie down and close your eyes, think of Oedipus not as a sinner, but as one thrust into a game whose rules no one taught. A man who dared to face himself, and when the truth shone too brightly, chose darkness so that the rest of his days might be lived in peace. You stand atop Olympus, holding more power than Washington, more drama than an entire season of The Crown, and accompanied by more mercurial personalities than a kindergarten classroom. There, amid the gleaming clouds, with thunder rumbling and lightning tracing highlighter strokes across the sky, you see a deity emerge not from a celestial gate, but from the forehead of Zeus. Yes, his forehead, not because he gave birth in any traditional way. Number. This is Greek myth where everything from tragedy to childbirth is handled in the most unconventional manner possible. After a divine hecatomb so fierce that even the strongest painkillers on Olympus would fail, Zeus commissioned Hephaestus, the heavenly blacksmith, to cleave his skull open. The result? Athena. No wails, no tears, not a single sigh. Athena steps forth fully armed, gleaming bronze cuirass, helmet shining like the sun, spear as unyielding as an unamendable decree. No diapers, no swaddling clothenly, the awe-inspiring presence forged from pure intellect, something money cannot buy, not even with Midas's golden touch. Athena never resorts to brute force. She doesn't need to. While the other gods compete to show off thunderbolts, roaring seas, or lions' masks, Athena sits down, picks up a slab of rock as a drafting table, and sketches out city plans. She doesn't destroy, she constructs, not with bricks, but with laws, justice, and strategy. When war arrives, Athena doesn't charge into battle like Ares shouting, "Strike." Instead, she steps back, draws maps, counts archers, calculates trajectories and supplies. She knows that victory isn't measured by the bloodstains on one's armor, but by answering the question, after victory, what comes next? You might call her the goddess of war. But that's not quite right. Her war is the art of reason, not chaos. She embodies strategy, not impulse. She is why, in every struggle for power, the mind that plans will always outmatch the hand that wields the sword. Athena is also the goddess of the city, not in the sense of build a house, then name it. No, she goes deeper. She teaches people how to organize, legislate, and live together without murdering each other every morning over who parked their chariot where. Athens, the city named for her, did not choose Poseidon with his trident and saltwater spring. They chose Athena because she offered them an olive tree. It may not sound as grand as a spring of water bursting from the earth, but try cooking, soothing your skin, or making shampoo without olives, and see how well that goes. Athena inspires culture, knowledge, and the arts. She does not shout demands for worship, she simply suggests that people read books, and when they do, they discover that she doesn't need to command. Wisdom spreads on its own, like a viral meme on the internet. You can trace Athena's stories through thousands of years. She helps Odysseus return home not with magic, but with strategic counsel. She turns Arachne into a spider not out of a hatred for weaving, but because Arachne dared to challenge her deity and won. Thus, Athena, like an art teacher whose feelings were offended, delivers a harsh lesson. Childish, perhaps, but consistent with her motto, I am skilled, and you ought to know better. Yet the most remarkable thing about Athena is that she doesn't need a throne. You never see her seated between Zeus and Hera, flaunting power. She moves, she works, she isn't meant to be idolized, she's meant to be emulated. And even Zeus, father and king of the gods, must tread carefully. For Zeus has power, but Athena wields an intellect that cannot be subdued. See, Athena never married, never took a lover, never starred in a romantic tragedy. She wasn't deceived by Zeus, punished by Hera, or cursed for outshining another at a feast. She stands alone but not lonely, because wherever thoughtful minds exist, a part of Athena lives within. And if tonight you lie in bed, hand on your brow, pondering tomorrow's tasks, that presentation, how best to reply to that email with finessithin, perhaps Athena is gently smiling in your mind. Not as a bolt of lightning, but as a brilliant insight. She's the whisper telling you to stay calm, the sketch you draw in your head when planning, the choice made at precisely the right moment. A goddess who doesn't require you to kneel, only that you lift your head. And that is Athena, emerging from the mind, sustained by intellect, and living in every decision you dare to think through before acting. You are Leto, not the goddess of theatrical glory or the lion-riding warrior maiden, but a quiet, discreet deity rarely featured on textbook covers, yet bearing a tale so fraught that even Netflix would pause to consider its content rating before adapting it. Leto had it all: beauty as serene as a windless dusk, gentle grace requiring no show of force, and a romantic entanglement with Zeus. And like every ill-fated woman in the Loved by Zeus, Ruined by Hera series, you became Hera's prime target of wrath. Hera, the goddess of marriage, the lawful wife, the cosmic poster child for jealous spouse, when she discovered you were pregnant by Zeus, did not hurl thunderbolts or smash temples. She cursed you, not with baldness or blemishes, but with a decree. Every land under the sun would refuse you shelter in childbirth. Yes, a universal ban on your motherhood. You carried not one but two unborn gods, yet no temple, woodland glade, or hillside would admit you. You became the mother whom the entire world rejected before you could even hear your children's first cries. And so you fled. No medical entourage, no birthing suite, only your own feet, each contraction's pain, and the fear upon your shoulders. You crossed forests, you climbed mountains, sweat and supplications mingled. Every territory you reached drove you away, not because you were unwelcome as a person, but because no one dared defy Hera's edict. You sought refuge on one island, denied. You tried another peninsula, turned away. Even the nature gods who once invited you to harvest feasts spurned you. You needed no palace, only a flat rock to lie upon. But even the stones refused. Then, as you thought you might deliver your children mid-air, a floating island appeared, anchored to no land, under no local administration, beyond Hera's domain. A kind of legal gray zone in Greek myth. Delos eyed you, you met its gaze. No words were needed, just the understanding of two beings belonging nowhere. And Delos moored itself, for the first time, in open sea solely so you could lie down and give birth. The pain arrived like the symphony of earth and sky. You had no physician, no fetal monitor, but you had willpower and you had Delos. A humble isle, unknown until that moment, now became the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. First came Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, of wild places and untamed spirits, a newborn girl already brimming with independence, opening her eyes ready to draw a bow. And then came Apollo, god of the sun, music, poetry, light, medicine, and quite a few other things, because in those days no one liked dividing up the portfolio. A baby boy ushered into the world already shining with a golden filter. You gave birth to two divine children beneath the open sky without a single helper, without applause, without a Mother of the Year award. You only needed a moment of peace, and you turned it into a miracle. But your story did not end there. A monstrous serpent named Python was sent by Hera as a belated birthday gift. This serpent spoke no words, bore no flower sits, sole mission was to hunt you and your children. Youth, mother of twins born mere days before, had to flee again. But this time, you were not alone. At your side stood Artemis, brave and silent, and Apollo, fierce and radiant, like the dawn after a storm. And when Apollo matured at divine speed in just days, he took up his silver bow, slew Python, and restored freedom to his mother. From that moment on, you never had to run again. No throne, no palace. You simply chose to live in peaceful seclusion among the mountains and forests, watching your two immortal children rise as living symbols, Artemis guiding the cool darkness, Apollo heralding the light of morning. And Leto became the nexus between these two extremes. No one wrote a tragedy about you. No one sculpted you riding a chariot of flame or holding up the sky. Yet you possess something few goddesses do, steadfastness that needs no display. You never wield force. You never sought vengeance. You simply carried on until the world could no longer ignore the power of a mother who refused to yield. Tonight, if you look up at the heavens, you will see Apollo's brilliant light and Artemis's cool shadow. But do not forget both light and dark sprang from Leto, the woman cursed, exiled, and pursued, yet who never abandoned what was right. And you lying in your soft blankets and pillows, if ever you feel lost, unsupported, remember Leto. That even when all the earth denies you, a small island can still anchor itself if only you have the courage to take another step. You see Apollo stride forward, no need for introductions or stage lights. He simply is himself, radiant, like dawn after a storm, tall, shoulders squared, steps echoing a cinematic score. In one hand he holds a lyre for art matters, and, in the other, a golden bow, because sometimes truth must be shot home before it's believed. Apollo is unlike other gods. He doesn't hurl thunderbolts just because I can, like his father Zeus, nor is he as fiery and impulsive as Ares. Apollo is order in a chaotic world. He is the light shining where titans once ran riotand. The friend with the best taste in music who'll still bluntly tell you, stop wearing striped pants with floral shirts. And his journey didn't begin with a feast, but with vengeance. Do you know what happened when Hera again sent Python, a monstrous serpent, to hunt down Apollo's mother, Leto? Leto had fled across the earth just to give birth to her twins. And when Apollo came of age, the first thing he did was not compose hymns or gift his sister a playlist, but to hunt Python. He found the creaturate Delphi. Delphi, back then, wasn't yet the famed oracle visited by thousands seeking career advice. It was a damp cave, and Python lay coiled inside like a sleepy, overfed guard. Apollono shout, no flourish, simply raised his bow, one arrow fired true, eyes open, no hesitation. Python fell, its demise lingering just long enough, but the verdict clear. Once again, light triumphs over darkness. Think that was the end? Number. It was the beginning. Unlike many heroes who open a tavern called Python BBQ, after their first victory, Apollo did not tout his feat with merch reading, I slew a serpent and all I got was this temple. Instead, he founded Delphi as the center of prophecy, where mortals could come, ask about their fate, and receive answers both cryptic and profound like mythical tarot cards. He appointed Pythia, the priestess perched on a tripod inhaling sacred vapors, to pronounce the oracles, not for show, but because Apollo revered truth. Even if it stings, even if cloaked in smoke, he believed humanity deserved to hear it so long as they genuinely listened. And if they didn't, then light would bear its fangs. Apollo does not suffer fools, especially in art. Once a satyr named Marsyas, who played the flute quite well, dared challenge him to a musical duel. Marsyas may have won tavern contests, but you do not challenge the god of music with a reed pipe from the underbrush. The contest began evenly, but then Apollo played his lyre and sang. Marsyas, powerless to sing, was disqualified by the rules. The outcome? Apollo hung Marsyas from a tree and flayed him alive. A stark lesson on knowing when to quit in the realm of artistry. Then there was Niobe, a woman proud of her 14 children who mocked Leto. I am a better mother than you. Niobe's mistake wasn't boasting of her children, but boasting before the mother of Artemis and Apollo. The fallout? Apollo slew all Niobe's sons, and Artemis slew all her daughters. A harsh reaction, but in Greek myth there is no file a complaint, only total annihilation. But don't mistake cruelty for malice. Apollo acts out of devotion to his ideals. Truth is sacred. Order is essential. He does not kill for sport. He punishes as a warning. You may jest with other gods, but you'd better take the light seriously. Beyond justice and retribution, Apollo is also a healer. He teaches mortals medicine, how to read a heartbeat, understand the body's frame, and heal with herbs and knowledge. A god who can end a life with an arrow, and also show you how to bind a wound with mint leaves. 2 faces, light and dark, just like he and his sister Artemis. And do you know what's most remarkable? He needs no acclamation. He demands no lavish offerings. He doesn't insist mortals chant his name 50 times a day. Apollo arrives like morning light quietly, yet you notice immediately if it ever fails to appear. You see Artemis emerge from the forest, no fanfare, no applause, no silk gowns billowing in the breeze, only wind and leaves, and the gaze of someone who needs no introduction. If you fail to recognize a goddess holding a silver bow beneath the moon, clad in a simple tunic, eyes like a fawn yet bearing the posture of an assassin, you have slept far too soundly. Artemis dislikes excess, no crown, no throne, no cosmetics. She values freedom over power, wilderness over ceremony. In a world where gods often sit atop Olympus demanding offerings like influencers craving followers, Artemis lives among mountains and deer, guided by hooting owls. She needs no ivory tower, only pine trees and a faithful hunting dog. From childhood, Artemis was different, daughter of Zeus and Leto, twin sister to Apollo, the god of light, music, and truth. You know, the type to scribble poetry in a diary. Artemis. She was born, looked around at the clamor, and immediately asked her father for a vow, to remain forever chaste, unmarried, and unbound. Zeus, the powerful father with an exceptionally soft spot for his daughter, agreed. In return, Artemis requested a few modest things: a silver bow, an inviolable herd of deer, a retinue of nymphs, and a forest of her own in which to roam undisturbed. Clearly, she did not ask for castles or kingdoms, only the space to be herself. In ancient Greece, that demand was near madness. But Artemis embodied it, wildly unique and utterly free. She protects forests. She guards wildlife. She shields maidens and anyone choosing life beyond society's binding norms. Artemis asks no songs of praise, only that people refrain from felling trees, hunting during mating season, and foolishly entering her streams while she bathes. Speaking of bathing, remember Actaeon? A hunter who accidentally stumbled upon Artemis bathing with her nymphs. It may not have been his fault, but Artemis believes in no accidents. The outcome? Actaeon was transformed into a stegon torn apart by his own hounds. Next time, he'd learn to knock first. Artemis shows no mercy to boundary violators, yet her boundaries are crystal clear. No one calls Artemis ambiguous. She is as direct as an arrow, as sharp as a full moon, and as steadfast as mountain stone. She doesn't need to shout to be heard, she simply appears. On another occasion, Orion the great hunter, handsome, jovial, believed he might befriend Artemis. They hunted together, laughed, and for a moment it seemed the forest goddess had opened her heart. But versions vary. Some say Apollo, her brother, driven by jealousy, tricked her into killing Orion. Others that Orion insulted her, and Artemis refused to forgive. The result: Orion became a constellation banished from the woods, and hung in the sky, in a most reluctant career shift. Artemis is not a goddess easily loved, nor easily understood, yet she is the friend you want if lost in a midnight forest. She won't tell fairy tales, but she'll show you how to build a fire. She won't wipe your tears, but she'll guide you to clean water and teach you to dress a wound. And if someone hurts you, let Artemis deal with it. She also protects mothers in childbirth. It seems paradoxical, a virgin goddess, never a mother herself, yet a guardian of laboring women. But Artemis understands that pain. Her mother, Leto, was pursued by Hera during pregnancy. Artemis, born first, is said to have aided Apollo's birth, a newborn helping deliver her brother. In myth, it means Artemis stands with the vulnerable. Beyond safeguarding nature and young women, Artemis embodies instinct. While Apollo represents reason, light, and clarity, Artemis is intuition, the night, the unspoken. She is the silence of a midnight grove, the footsteps you fail to hear, the watchful eyes from afar, not to threaten, but to guard, to remain vigilant. In a world too loud, you sometimes need a goddess who knows when to stay silent. She erects no grand temples. Her sanctuaries are the night sky, swaying treetops, the glassy surface of a stream where deer drink. To honor her, simply respect life, all life, from blades of grass to whispered dreams. And when humanity forgets that, when they believe they can conquer nature, invade every corner, when they scoff at instinct, thinking reason suffices, then Artemis emerges, silver bow raised not to slay, but to remind. Because sometimes, a silent arrow echoes farther than 100 speeches. You are Arachne, not a princess, not a goddess, no divine blood, only a loom, only threads, and a pride that even the master weavers in your village dare not challenge. When asked, who taught you to weave so beautifully, you lift your chin, wipe your hands on your apron, and say, I taught myself, not Athena. That simple statement, yet in ancient Greece, where gods could unleash thunderbolts at a mere frown, such words were like thrusting your hand into a hornet's nest. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and patron of weaving, took great offense. She did not arrive in a thunderstorm or ride in on a golden chariot. She appeared as an old crone, bent with age, leaning on a staff, her voice trembling. Child, mind your words, do not rashly insult the divine. You, Arachne, had no idea she was a goddess, and like any confident artisan proud of her skill, you replied without hesitation, if Athena is so skilled, let her weave against me. So the crone straightened, white hair gleamed like spun gold, her staff transformed into a spear. The air hummed as though a massive loom had awakened, and you realized, Athena disliked a challenge, but she could not refuse one. 2 looms were set up in the town square. People gathered from far and wide. On one side stood the goddess, her armor gleaming like morning sun. On the other, you bare, armed, hair tied with stray yarn. But in your gazes, neither yielded. Athena wove a tapestry of divine power. At the center sat Zeus, solemn on his throne, surrounded by gods resplendent, majestic, and somewhat self-important. Scenes of mortals punished for daring to defy the gods were illustrated like textbook warnings. Niobe losing her children, Pentheus torn apart, the shuddering crowd. You, Arachne, chose a different theme. You wove the scandals the gods preferred forgotten, Zeus's endless disguises to deceive women, sometimes swan, sometimes bull. Poseidon pursuing Medusa in Athena's temple. Apollo's deceit of Daphne. Each thread in your cloth was a needle to the gods' vanity. The crowd gasped. Your tapestry was not only beautiful, it rang with truth, far too true. They turned to Athena, as though seeing her for the first time. When Athena approached, you expected to be turned to stone or rained upon in agony or spun into a mulberry tree like so many others in myth. But no. Athena studied the tapestry and nodded slowly. She could fault no technique. Not a single stitch was out of place. Then she did a remarkable thing. She tore the tapestry to shreds. Not because it was flawed, but because it was true. And when you looked down, your hands had shrunk. Your fingers lengthened, thin and pointed. 2 extra eyes stared back round and black as burnt thread. Your hair receded into fine bristles. You crawled from the loom, not a woman, but a spider. Folks call it punishment. But the weavers understood. It was recognition. Athena could not allow you to continue speaking truth in thread, yet she could not let you vanish. So she made you weave forever, without rest, in the form of a creature voiceless yet leaving its webs on every rooftop. You are Arachne, the girl who dared face the gods and weave the truth. You can no longer speak, but every time someone sees a web glimmering in the morning sun, they wonder, might this be a subtle reminder that even the gods are not flawless? And when children knock down your webs in the corner with a broom, you may feel a sting, yet you will smile. For though transformed and silenced, you are still weaving not with wool or thread, but with gossamer strand sand sometimes. Silence is the strongest form of protest. You are Arachne, not a princess, not a goddess, no divine blood, only a needle, only thread, and a pride that even the master weavers in the village dared not challenge. When people asked, "Who taught you to weave so beautifully?" you lifted your head high, wiped your hands on your apron, and said, "I taught myself, not Athena." It was a simple statement. But in ancient Greece, where gods had a habit of unleashing thunderbolts at a single frown, those words were like poking a hornet's nest. Athenathe, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and patroness of weaving, took great offense. Athena did not arrive in a storm or ride in on a golden chariot. She came in the guise of a bent old crone leaning on a staff, her voice trembling. "My child, be careful with your words. Do not rashly insult the divine." You, Arachne, had no idea she was a goddess, and like any woman proud of her talent, you replied without hesitation, "If Athena is so skilled, why doesn't she weave with me in competition?" Then the crone straightened. Her white hair gleamed like spun gold, her staff became a spear. The air trembled, as if a colossal loom had awoken, and you understood. Athena did not like challenges, but she could not refuse one. 2 looms were set up in the town square. People gathered from every corner. On one side stood the goddess, her armor shimmering like morning sunlight. On the other stood you, bare, armed, your hair tied with stray wool, but in your eyes, neither of you would yield. Athena wove a tapestry celebrating the god's authority. At its center sat Zeus, stern upon his throne, surrounded by other deities splendent, majestic, and somewhat proud. Scenes of mortals punished for daring to defy the divine were depicted in textbook detail. Niobe, losing her children, Pentheus torn asunder, the crowd shuddering. You, Arachne, wove a different theme. You depicted the truths the gods wished forgotten. Zeus's endless transformations to deceive women, sometimes a swan, sometimes a bull, Poseidon chasing Medusa in Athena's temple, Apollo's deceit of Daphne. Each thread in your cloth was a sting to the god's pride. The crowd gasped. Your tapestry was not only beautiful, it was real, too real. So much so that they turned to Athena as if seeing her for the first time. When Athena stepped forward, you expected to be turned to stone or rained upon or transformed into a mulberry tree like so many others in myth. But no, Athena examined your tapestry and nodded slowly. She could find no flaw in your technique, every single stitch was impeccable. Then she did something astonishing. She tore the tapestry to shreds. Not because it was flawed, but because it was true. And when you lifted your head, your hands had shrunk. Your fingers lengthened, thin and sharp. New eyes appeared round and black like burnt thread. Your hair retreated into fine bristles. You crawled away from the loom, no longer a woman, but a spider. Folks call it punishment, but the weavers understood. It was acknowledgement. Athena could not allow you to continue speaking truth through cloth, yet she could not let you vanish. So she decreed that you would weave forever, never resting, in the form of a creature that cannot speak yet leaving its web on every roof. You are Arachne, the girl who dared look the gods in the eye and weave the truth. Your voice is silenced, but whenever someone sees a spider's web glistening in the morning sun, they wonder, could this be a quiet reminder that even the divine are imperfect? And when children sweep your webs away with brooms, you may feel a sting of annoyance, yet secretly you smile, for though transformed and silenced, you still weave. Not with wool or thread, but with strands of gossamer, and sometimes silence is the strongest form of resistance. And now, you may open your eyes a little or gently, close them to reflect on the journey you've taken, a voyage through Olympus's fractures, where power always carries disastrous PR. The gods excelled at thunder and weaving fates, yet were utterly inept at apologizing. And the women? They lived, endured, and were named for an island, a star, or if truly lucky, became an emblem on a warrior's shield. From Alcmene with her silent smile to Elara buried in pain. From Arachne whose talent went unrecognized to Medusa whose honor was only restored by a severed head, and let us not forget Litoth fleeing mother, or Athenatha mind forged in divine bone. Each woman was not merely a victim, but a living testament to a mythology that loves to shift blame and dramatize its heroes. You see, nothing is simple in the realm of the gods. Light always coexists with shadow, wisdom with suffering, and freedom comes at a price. So if today you feel your own life tangled and chaotic, remember, at least you were not turned into a cow, swallowed by Zeus, or forced to birth giants in a cave. Now breathe slowly. Let these myths lull you into sleep where justice may take the shape of a shield, and silence may speak louder than words. Good night, and until next time, in another bedtime chapter of history.